Hello, everybody. Welcome back here to the Wine with Jimmy channel. Delighted that you have stopped by, and welcome to this channel that focuses on everything vinous and wonderful about the world of wine. So we are now going to be looking at a series on the Canary Islands. We are on part 3 of 7, looking now at the key grape varieties of the Canary Islands. So we're going to focus on the key white, and next video will be the key red. So this is on Listan Blanco, otherwise known as Palomino. If you do have any comments, questions or concerns, please do comment on this video below. Great to hear from you. Maybe you love Listan Blanco. What are your experiences with it? Have you been to the Canary Islands? And so on. So let's get rocking and rolling, looking at the world of Listan Blanco. Of course, it's important initially to think about where this grape variety comes from. Now, a key synonym for this is its original name, which is Palomino, and that is from Andalusia, which eventually becomes known as Listan Blanco in the Canary Islands. Now, the name Palomino is said to be that of Fernan Ibáñez Palomino, who was a military officer of some importance during the Reconquista. And that's when the Christian armies reconquered southern Spain, of course, from the Moorish occupation. Now, we have this important character who is said to have been very important for King Alfonso, I think it's the 9th, and in fact was very instrumental in bringing him back to health when he was not too well, serving him small dishes, which later would actually become tapas down in Sevilla. And this is apparently where the name of the grape variety eventually comes from. Now, with the Spanish expansion into both the New World with Columbus, for example, and into the East with the likes of Magellan, it became planted on the island. So this Palomino grape variety made the transport down to the Canary Islands, but with the distinctly different geology, it produces very different styles than you would find from the mainland, from Andalusia. This then would continue on. There's 2 arrows here. The grape went across to the Americas, and it went down to places like South Africa, where it has actually been planted quite significantly in the past. Now, it's been a very economically important grape variety in the Canary Islands since the end of the golden age of Malvasia aromatica, and it took over really as the backbone grape variety behind the dry Vidueno wines, which are the multi-filled blend wines that you find across specifically Tenerife. So yes, let's look into the grape variety more in terms of its link to other varieties. So we know it's the Canary Islands' most abundant grape variety, but it's also of really great importance as being the direct progenitor of 3 of the other local varieties. So therefore, very important in giving birth to Listan Negro, Albio Criollo, which there's a very interesting amount now being produced across the islands, and also Forastera Blanca, which is nothing to do with the Forastera you may find from Ischia, the island just off the Italian coast, for example. So we firmly know it has a big history here because of its ability, of course, to produce these others. So here is the key characteristics. We know it's native to Andalusia as Palomino, and in Andalusia, it's fairly productive, thin-skinned, and it makes fairly low acidity at maturity in this very, very warm part of the world. Jerez is very, very warm. It's generally not very aromatic, and therefore crafting quite neutral, low alcohol wines, which don't tend to therefore be the most inspiring as a light wine. Hence why it has been produced, Palomino, as actually a base wine for fortified wine. It's the principal grape variety, of course, behind a lot of sherry production, such as Manzanilla and also Fino sherry. So there are some good examples. There are an increasing amount of interesting still wines, but generally speaking, a lot of it is used for fortified production. In the Canary Islands, though, it is different. So it's productive, yes, volcanic soils, plenty of minerals, nutrients, does very well in those soils. But it produces wines here with much higher natural acidities, a much more sort of saline character through its geology. And it's distinctly more aromatic than its Andalusian counterpart. So it's not still classed as, a huge aromatic, but you do find there certainly is more flavor in comparison to what you'd find from a normal base wine made from Palomino. So subtle, but with decent aromatics and often with quite distinctive amounts of reduction. So things based around sulfur that you may find due to the geology found here. So often a bit of that flint struck match character can be found in some of the Listan Blancos. Now, of course, being the most abundantly grown white grape variety across the islands, it has fulfilled the role of producing huge volumes of easy drinking white wines, which of course will meet the demands and the necessary needs of the tourism trade and local restaurants, the big resorts, for example. It performs very well in this role because it's very productive and it has disease resistance virtually across all microclimates and soils across the archipelago. So yes, it's very successful. There's a certain type of wine that's often used for local markets, and that's called affrutado. You'll see actually a bottle here on the left in this kind of blue stained glass. And these affrutado wines go on sale the same year the grapes are grown, providing a dependable annual cash flow to underpin winemaking economies in the Canary Islands, especially for the smaller bodegos. While it's true that affrutado wines are generally using grapes from lower altitude sites, they do require more heavy technical intervention to shorten the vinification process. It doesn't necessarily mean these wines lack character. They're often with a bit of sugar. That's when technology comes in, stopping fermentations early to make sure you get an off-dry or medium dry character to these affrutados. There are some really lovely ones to be found, but generally these are made for, of course, this local market. So yeah, the things about Listan Blanco. It's unusually tolerant of intense sun and heat. It maintains good health, whilst neighbouring vines of different varieties actually suffer heat stroke in the Canary Islands. So they'll often need a lot of shading, but Listan Blanco's hardy in that sense. Now, that's really important because a lot of producers here are worried about the warmer conditions that people are finding more and more as each year goes on. So if this is interpreted as a consequence of ongoing climate change, then you may rightly predict the continued dominance of Listan Blanco on the Canary Islands through the 21st century, certainly because of its resistance to drought and heat. What do we expect then? So we mentioned more aromatic than its Andalusian mainland counterpart, but still subtle aromas with things like a range of herbs, citrus fruits, and then also like a striking and unmistakable volcanic mineral expression linked to reduction. So stony, smoky, flinty, sulfury kind of components. In addition, the oldest vines with the deepest roots in the best sites can actually combine to produce wines that, with a little aging, can evolve into something that's absolutely wonderful, textured, more concentrated, with a fair bit of complexity behind it. Typically moderate to high in acidity, moderate alcohol, and very interesting, of course, as a variety. There you are. So Listan Blanco. Now, when I go into the actual DO areas in part 5, part 6, and part 7, I will talk about key producers of a variety of grape varieties in that section. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for listening. If you do have any comments, please do get in touch in the comments section below. And make sure you click like and subscribe. And if you find yourself in the UK, come and say hi for a class, a glass, or a bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Thank you. Bye-bye.